Wizard101, nearly 18 years old, finally came to console, and the Switch was delayed even longer than the other consoles. Now that it's finally out, how is it? Originally, Wizards 101 came out in 2008 on PC. I played it growing up, and it's awesome to see that it's still going forward. I've played it off and on throughout most of my life. The way it launches on Switch, it's $20 for the first arc, which is the first main story of the game, when it originally came out on PC. I think that's a pretty good deal instead of using a subscription model to just start off the game. Unfortunately, because it's online, you need Switch Online, which really dampers the good deal of the $20 price tag. But it makes sense, and that's probably Nintendo's decision, not the developers. The game probably controls like other console versions. You use the D-pad for most things, and you walk around with the joystick. Unlike other third-party games, you do have a camera stick with the right stick, but most of the time you're just going the direction with the left stick, and the camera kind of just stays behind you. But most of the time with gameplay and with menus, you're using the D-pad for navigation. You can click down the left stick to enter cursor mode, which basically gives you a mouse, but then you can't move. I don't think this supports the mouse mode of the Switch 2 because it is just using backwards compatibility to run on Switch 2, which is unfortunate, but it works. So the visuals. Graphically, it's probably going to be the same as everything else. I didn't notice any difference. The game is old anyway, and it looks like Wizards 101. It's 720p in handheld and 1080p docked from what I can tell. From a normal viewing distance, it's actually kind of fine. It doesn't have a anti-aliasing from what I can tell, but it's clear enough. But unfortunately, no Switch 2 version, so you don't get a 4K UI or anything like that. But I would say 1080p is enough. It's kind of the minimum, but it's enough. It looks fine. The bigger issue is the performance. I tried this out on Switch 1 and Switch 2. I have an original Switch, and in terms of performance, it's alright to kind of bad. Sometimes in battles in towers or in rooms secluded, you get basically a smooth 60 FPS. And since it's turn-based, it's not the most input-sensitive game anyway. But once you step outside or go to the commons where there's a lot of people, the frame rate tanks. I think it's below 20 FPS. So the way I would recommend to play this game on Switch 1 is to go to realms labeled perfect, where there's not a lot of people and the performance improves significantly. Once you're not in the such populated areas anyway, and you're more around just enemies and doing dungeons or boss battles, it actually performs kind of okay. There's no major issues. It's just mostly those big crowds. This seems very CPU bottlenecked. It doesn't seem to be a GPU issue, which makes sense. The exact same thing is on PC. Even with the most powerful CPU, you're still not getting locked frame rates. It still drops below 60 FPS all the time. So spaghetti code, old game, makes sense. It is just unfortunate that the Switch 1 can give you such a poor experience. This is where the Switch 2 massively improves. Even in big crowds, it's still usable. It's still dropping quite a bit. It doesn't iron out everything, but it becomes playable and becomes not too bad. I would still recommend Switch 2 users to be in stuff labeled as normal instead of crowded, because you just get a more consistent frame rate. In handheld mode, they're basically identical performance-wise, maybe slightly better on the Switch 2 because of the VRR screen. It might smooth out a couple drops, but it doesn't fix it 100% either. From my experience on Switch 1, actually the performance is a little bit better in docked mode, which makes sense because the clock speeds are higher and everything is just a little more bumped up. But on Switch 2, most of the time you're getting a pretty smooth experience. Even when there's other people around, you can go battle and just enjoy the experience most of the time. You'll get some small frame drops, but overall the Switch 2 fixes it mostly. And on the handheld mode, even though it's only 720p, it looks fine, and the 7.9-inch screen makes it feel a lot more comfortable. The Switch 1 screen is a little bit too small, in my opinion, for Wizards 101 because it's a lot of text and it's a lot of menus. But the resolution isn't the issue, it's mostly just the size. But both versions of it are basically perfect when you're in a closed room doing a boss battle, which are generally the most epic battles and more interesting to look at things anyway. So the Switch 1 version is playable for sure. Which is awesome because this is the first portable console version of this game. Yes, you could have always played it on a laptop, which is not a bad experience at all. But this is cool because the Switch is smaller and it's a handheld, and so you can take it with you on vacation, use hotel Wi-Fi, use a hotspot. It can work. It just is unfortunate because it is an MMO. You always have to be online. So I would say the Switch 2 is 80% of the time fine. It just has some frame drops here and there, but generally it stays playable. And it smooths out most of the issues and it looks pretty smooth. The Switch 1 is fine, but stay to the lower population servers and you'll be playing a pretty playable game. It's just probably not a locked 60 FPS. This ends up being an awesome way to play the game, and I would actually recommend it if you haven't played it, or if you have, I think the Switch version is a cool way to play it. I think the $20 is totally worth it. But if you just want to play it for free just to see if you even like the gameplay style, play the PC version, or I think even the other console versions let you play a chunk of the game for free. But if you think it's something you'll like, I think this is a fun turn-based MMORPG. I think it's really fun. Obviously, it's more kiddie-oriented, but there's a lot of mechanics. You can get really into it. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty fun, and it's very replayable, as many MMORPGs are, so you can just play it again and again and again. This version is actually pretty acceptable, and I'm happy it exists at all. Enjoy Wizards 101!